Hey everybody, my name is Gabriel Dillon. It's a pleasure to be here and to be able to speak with you guys today about personalization, about content, about artificial intelligence. I represent Contentful, which is a digital experience platform for building all sorts of different kinds of experiences across many different kinds of channels. I'm very, very honored to speak to you today, and I want to thank AWS for their amazing partnership. I'll talk about this later on, but Contentful is native to AWS, and the trust and scalability that we provide to our clients is in large part due to the trust and scalability that AWS provides to us. So thank you, AWS, for the opportunity, and for you guys for coming and speaking to me today. We're going to talk about supercharging personalized experiences with Contentful and AWS, in particular Amazon Bedrock. Okay, so one would think that with the ability to generate an infinite amount of content that marketers would be super happy, right? Because now suddenly they don't have to do their job anymore. I would be pretty happy too. But there's actually a huge problem with being able to deliver high quality experiences today in the age of artificial intelligence and the ability to generate content with the click of a button. Specifically, it's that so much of that generated content is generic. It's dumb, it's generic, it's boring, it's just not interesting enough to be able to drive the kinds of behaviors that we as brands, as organizations, want our clients and customers to do. And customers know it. When they receive those types of messages from your website or your app, they get bored. We call this the great content collapse. The analogy that I want to sort of offer for you is, if you remember, like way back in like 2011, there was a UI library that was released called Bootstrap. Does anybody remember Bootstrap? Yeah? And then all of a sudden, all the websites looked exactly the same. Now we're doing the same thing with the copy. We're doing the same thing with the images. We sound boring to our clients. And it's happening at the beginning of the funnel, the middle of the funnel, and the end of the funnel. By the way, if it's not clear, this is a marketing talk. It's not an infrastructure talk, but I'll cover some infrastructure topics as well. So this is breaking our marketers. This content collapse is breaking our marketers across the board. They're asked to create more with fewer resources, and supposedly artificial intelligence is supposed to solve the problems that they encounter along the way. Down at our bottom of our funnel, we're supposed to have really loyal customers who experience being spoken to as individuals, but they're just still served the same generic content that they received when they were at the top of the funnel. The paradox that we talk about here is that we have a whole bunch of speed, but we've lost relevance. We've lost the ability to address our users as humans. In fact, what's happened is that artificial intelligence has offered this new skill set that is separate from the content layer that we use to be able to govern workflows, to be able to publish content, and distribute really great stories to our users. My CMO, Elizabeth Maxon, recently collaborated with The Atlantic on a big think piece. There'll be a webinar in a week or so. And what we're calling it is this big sort of misunderstanding about what artificial intelligence is doing to marketers. It should really be making marketers more human. It should be freeing them up to be more creative, to be able to think more about their users, and to be able to publish content that speaks to individuals based off of what they need. And instead, what we're getting is something much worse. It's because the artificial intelligence is at the wrong part of the marketing stack. It's in this sidebar. You guys have seen the AI sidebar, but why isn't it actually part of the content layer itself? So, as I mentioned, my name is Gabriel Dillon. I'm the practice lead for our personalization product. So we're going to talk quite a lot about personalization and how it solves some of the problems associated with generic content. But first, let's take a moment and talk about personalization in a more general sense. Because quite frankly, personalization is not new. It's not an artifact of artificial intelligence. We've been trying to create custom, curated, tailored journeys that are highly relevant for a very long time. but it often fails. It often fails not because the technology is bad, it is actually getting much better these days, but because of the people and the processes that are used to be able to create the experiences that are supposed to be personalized. And there's a bunch of different ways in which those sorts of processes fail. There's siloed content, which is caused by it causes bad cross-channel experiences. You get a really great email and then you land on the website and it's completely different. There's superficial personalization. That's often what gives people the ick factor when you suddenly start using their name and they're like, you don't know me, website, like I'm just doing my thing, and why are you talking to me like we're friends? There's inaccurate personalization where you actually try to leverage some customer data, but it's out of date or it's not really integrated well. There's redundant experiences when maybe a marketer got really clever and created an aspect that was very powerful, but it's only in one little piece of the experience. And then they come to another spot and there's some discordant dissonance. There's also poorly measured experiences where there's no feedback loop. So the marketing organization that's trying to create these experiences doesn't know if it's actually working, if it's actually moving the needle and driving behaviors the way that they would want. And then lastly, there's the dependence on developers. To be able to be fast, to be able to create content that captures a moment in time, we need our marketers to be freed from the ticket queue and the requirements of the front end. In the report in The Atlantic, we talk about like this optimism versus expectation gap. Like everybody knows that personalization is the answer. It should make my job really easy to sell personalization technology. And yet the way that we actually implement it is very, very challenging. The data doesn't match what we actually hope it to do. And AI is supposed to fix these problems, but quite often it actually exacerbates them. When you think about a marketer with a really powerful AI tool that lives outside of the content layer, suddenly using that AI tool to create a bunch of content, that's when we get that poor quality content. That's when the content gets worse. So, how do we actually fix this? Well, that's the next step of the equation. Good personalization, good AI native personalization looks very differently than that past experience. In the first place, it's going to be based off of structured content. Content where the definition of what is a hero is very, very clear, and that it can be reused across a mobile app, a website, a kiosk, maybe even a watch. Second, we want automated guardrails so that our marketers are able to create safely. When they publish content, they know that it's going to adhere to the brand guidelines, it's going to fit within the front end. This is what I think of as like the boring part of like old-fashioned content management systems, but it's a critical part of what makes content operations actually successful. And if you just add AI on the side, it doesn't actually work. The third thing we need to be able to make sure that AI native personalization succeeds is context-aware content generation, which means the AI has an understanding of the content model. What is a hero in relation to a landing page? It has an understanding of the context of the user. Did they bring with them a UTM parameter? Did they bring with them a refer? Have they clicked a link in the last 5 minutes, in the last 5 seconds? Did they just click a link 50 milliseconds ago? And we also need the context of the marketing organization itself. What are the brand guidelines? What is the tone and voice that we want to apply in this particular channel? Very lastly, we need an API-first delivery layer, something that is going to be able to deliver that content regardless of where it's going to be used. We want all of these things to come together in a content layer that works in tandem with the AI so that we can personalize the content based off of where it's going to appear, for whom it's going to appear, and what they're actually trying to achieve, what we want them to achieve. And so that brings us back to that idea of the content collapse, marketers going kind of nuts because too much is going on. The truth is that we have content be the differentiator for how we can actually build customer experiences. I'm sure that some of you work in tech companies who are marketing your product to prospects. How do you compete against your competition? How do you actually communicate that your product is different and that your company is going to do business differently? Personalized experiences are the opportunity to target that content and build curated journeys for the prospects that you are targeting. To do that, we need to collect a lot of information. We need two main kinds of context. The first, let's call them behavioral signals, those real-time signals that are actually tell you about what that user is doing in that very moment when they come to your website. And the second is all of the other things that they've done in context of your brand before. Maybe they're part of an email campaign. Maybe they've purchased something in the past. Maybe you can actually identify that they work at company X, Y, or Z. So you got your behavioral signals and then known customer characteristics. Those sorts of things that we can ascribe to somebody based off of what we know. The first is a real-time problem. How do we collect that and make it actionable right away? How can we receive the signal from the front end, use it to segment that user into an experience and give that experience to them without any sort of delay? And in the second, it's an integration problem. How do we activate the data that lives inside the CRM or the CDP or the warehouse? When we have both of those, then we can start combining those to create the contextual information that's necessary to provide a relevant, high-quality, compelling experience for the user. And when we do that, we should experience improved conversion rates, improved engagement. We should be able to drive repeat behaviors and improve lifetime value of our customers. And we should be able to move them through the funnel with less friction. But all of this breaks down if you don't trust the process, able to scale it, or have all access to all of that lovely context. That's where AWS steps into the Contentful equation. We partner, and I mentioned this earlier, we're built on AWS because it's the same infrastructure that you all are trusting with your businesses today. It's a critical part of our value proposition to our clients that we can be built on a solution as robust and scalable as AWS is. But it's actually Amazon Bedrock that gives us the special artificial intelligence powers that we offer within Contentful. Bedrock allows you to use the generative AI models that you've determined as an organization with all of your governance and workflows associated with them, with all of your security applied to them without a whole lot of fuss. And Contentful brings Bedrock directly into that content layer. To rewind for a second, I said earlier that if you just have AI in a sidebar, you're just compounding the problem and giving marketers a bunch of tooling that is a little bit too big for their sort of scope. But if you actually build AI using Bedrock into the tools they use to create, publish, and distribute content, then you get something much different and more powerful. Because it's in that content layer that you already have defined what is your content model, what is that hero, how does it play in your mobile app versus your website. It's already where you're storing your governance, your approval workflows, and it's already where you have all of that customer-based data, the context that allows us to segment the users. So let me take a quick second to show you how it actually works. I just want to add a disclaimer that this reference architecture is not for my audience, and maybe it'll be for you more than it's for me. But when we think about the way to actually combine Bedrock and Contentful, we put Contentful at the center. We add a structure around the content. We provide governance and workflows. There's permissions and roles for who gets to work on the content and how. And then we flow into that Amazon Bedrock, which is the intelligence engine. That's the learning model. That's the way that we're actually going to activate artificial intelligence. It creates content, it localizes content, it suggests new variants, and it helps us identify users based off of the confluence of actions that they've taken recently. And then wrapped around both, we have the API-first composable architecture, the surface area for the website or the app that's going to consume the content and display it for our customers. It's essentially the front end. Contentful exposes all of the content and experiences through those APIs, which means that we can distribute that content to the channels that are being used. This gives you three things. Gives you speed, because content and AI all work within the same platform. They are decoupled, so yes, you manage Bedrock separately from Contentful, but they work together. Gives you safety because governance lives in the content layer, so the same rules that your marketing team used in the past to publish content apply. And it gives you scale because, of course, AWS underpins everything. The scale and infrastructure that it offers gives us the sort of robustness and assurances that we need to be able to provide experiences. So Contentful orchestrates the content, Bedrock is the intelligence layer, AWS scales, and your experiences are able to adapt in real time. So to be able to make this really work, we need to build a program around personalization and testing. The ability to optimize our experiences and be able to create something that is data-driven and informs future decisions around content is what we want to achieve. But to get there, it's actually iterative and small. We want to be able to empower marketers to experiment and be able to collect data about those experiments. We want to be able to measure the impact and align them with business goals. Because ultimately what we're trying to do is we're creating a program that will get credibility from the rest of the organization to be able to continue investing efforts into that. If you do a big bang release of something and it doesn't go the way that you want, it's going to be another 2 years before you try again. So if you can do it incrementally and start small, make an important change that has an impact on business, then you're going to have a really great opportunity to create that life cycle and that sort of flywheel effect. And we also need governance to be an important part of the equation. I've said it a couple of times. From Bedrock's perspective, that means that you're using your own LLM. It's your own Claude or your own Llama. From Contentful's perspective, it's the roles and permissions that somebody needs to be able to work on content and publish it to the front end. It's the audit logs. It's the workflows and approvals. When you have AI live directly within the content layer, you can access all of that content, context, and structure to be able to make the marketers empowered to publish content easily and smoothly without a major deploy. I'm going to skip this for a second and talk about an example in the real world. Our client, Kraft Heinz, has been able to roll out dozens of experiences using Contentful and AWS, and their experience at scale has been able to drive incredible business results. Before they worked with us, they had content scattered across many different systems, they worked with multiple CMSs, there was inconsistent governance, and there was no way to create consistency across brands or regions and localizations. Afterwards, they brought Contentful in to unify their content portfolio. They have workflows to be able to govern different brand experiences in a unified way, and they're able to use real-time personalization to be able to target the experiences that actually drive business results for each of their brands and portfolio clients. The results speak for themselves. 78% increase in conversion, 30% increase in engagement, over 180 personalized experiences launched across many different brands across the globe. And so that brings me to the end. I'm glad the last slide was the one that almost didn't work. I've talked about how to combine Contentful and Bedrock and how bringing AI closer to the content layer gives the marketers the ability to get out of that content collapse. It helps them make better decisions about the content that they're delivering to their users. It helps them create speed and trust within their sort of workflow. We have a booth over at 1457 where you can see it in action. I'm just the sales guy, but I've got an amazing guy over at the booth who will show you how this works and how it can work for your organization today. Thank you very, very much. If you have any questions, I'll hang out over there. And I really appreciate your time and attention today.